You're listening to Strange by Nature, your guide to the strange, weird, unbelievable, and improbable wonders of the natural world.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here today. I am Kirk Mona, and I am joined today by Rachel Ginza and Victoria Thompson. We are all professional naturalists who together have scoured the world for weird and wonderful wonders just to please your mammalian brain's desire for novelty. Isn't that nice? Let's do this.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show. It's good to see you guys again.
Yay!
Yeah, been a good week. Good to be back.
Good to be here. I have something squirm-inducing this week for us.
Ooh, yes.
Ooh.
And Kirk, I don't know, I don't think you've updated us recently on how the competition between our Canadian and Australian listeners is going.
You know,
You have
I
not.
am literally pulling up the statistics right now so I can give you the exact numbers.
Oh, good.
I mean, do we want to jump right into that?
Well, I mentioned this because I'm not sure how our Aussie listeners are going to feel about what I'm going to talk about right now.
Oh, well, the contest is over. So
Yeah, contest
I
is
think
straight
it's-
up over now. Yeah. Who won?
Yeah, because it's
We have to
September
know.
now. So,
Oh, was it only for... Okay.
well, here's
yeah.
the thing.
I
Yeah.
forgot it was time limited. Yes.
So if you recall, at the beginning of the summer, the order of where our listeners came from was United States first, then United Kingdom, and then Canada, and then Australia,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And we're trying to say, Australia, can you edge out Canada? But also Canada, don't give in without a fight. Well, I have to tell you, I have these statistics for the month of August.
Yes.
And in August, the number 3 country of downloads was Australia.
Oh!
So Australia actually edged out Canada. Way
that's
to
so
go,
exciting.
Australia.
Nice work.
Impressive work.
Oh,
Now,
man.
I don't recall exactly what I said, if it was going to be the average of all 3 months. Because if you look at like the last, just June, July, August, Canada did still, beat out Australia over the
Right.
course of the 3 months. But in the last month, Australia really came on strong. Wasn't enough to like get into the top 3 if it averaged all 3 months. But in that third month, they really, put on the gas and gave it the beans, and they got to number 3. So
What's so
way to
exciting?
go, Australia.
Especially since we talk about Australia quite a bit.
We do.
All our Australian listeners were staying inside because of the story I'm about to tell.
Oh, well,
Oh, no.
that could be. Let's find out.
Well, our story starts in January of 2021 when our protagonist started feeling ill. And we don't
God.
actually know her name, but I am going to call her Sue.
Beautiful.
Sue was
I
64.
already don't like where this is going.
Yeah. Sue
I'm
was
not loving
64
it.
at the time, and she lived in southeastern New South Wales.
Okay.
And Sue had had some abdominal pain and diarrhea for about 3 weeks, and then she started getting
Ugh.
a dry cough and night sweats,
Oh, good.
at which point she decided
Awful.
it was probably a good idea to go into the hospital.
Yeah,
and-
I would say
Okay.
so.
Yeah. Doctors there were a little confused by her symptoms, but eventually decided that she had an unusual kind of pneumonia and treated her
Okay.
accordingly with steroids.
I'm guessing that's wrong.
Yeah. that's wrong.
That sounds... I don't know why they... Okay, sure.
Okay. So she's on steroids now. For a few weeks, her symptoms improved. Then she
Mhm.
landed back in the hospital with fever and continuing cough. And now scans showed that she had lesions on her spleen and her liver.
Oh, no.
Oh.
And so they did more tests. She tested negative for all the diseases than the parasites that they tested her for.
Okay. Huh.
More or less by process of elimination at this point, the doctors decide that she probably has a rare blood disorder where a certain type of white blood cell is produced in excess and causes problems in various organs. Kind of get caught up there.
Okay.
So the treatment for this is an immunosuppressant drug.
Oh,
And they also gave her a round of ivermectin, which is an antiparasitic, because she had some travel history outside of the country in previous years, not recently, but before. And there were like a couple blood tests that indicated, well, maybe this like could possibly be indicating a parasitic infection. All right.
Kind of covering their bases.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Right.
Over the next several months, some things got better, some things stayed the same, but she was unable to get off the steroids without her cough flaring up again and some other symptoms.
Huh.
This has all been dragging on for months at this point. In 2022, she then started experiencing forgetfulness and depression that started getting worse and worse. Yeah, and this went on for 3 months in 2022. She was eventually sent for an MRI of her brain, which showed she had a brain lesion.
Oh, no.
So they opened her up for a biopsy, brain biopsy, and to the shock of the surgeons and everyone else, what they found inside the lesion was a worm.
Oh, God, I saw this story, Victoria.
Yes.
Oh, this is so horrible.
No. Gross.
Yeah, I didn't realize what it was until the very end, and I'm like, oh, no, I saw this.
Yes.
Oh, no.
A brain in the worm. Or a worm in the brain.
A worm in the brain. A thin, red,
don't like it.
8-centimeter long worm that was alive.
That is too
and
long.
wriggling.
That is too long, Victoria. It's too long. Oh, I hate that. Oh, I have a hood. I'm going to close it now just to protect my brain.
Okay, you just caused Rachel a turtle herself.
I'm
not sure where we
turtling.
can go from here.
Turtle. Okay.
Oh, that's so gross.
Yeah.
You'll be okay, Rachel. Our Australian listeners may not be, but you'll be okay.
They were able to identify it through morphology and DNA as a parasitic roundworm.
Oh, no.
Madagascar robertsi, which normally inhabits a snake called the carpet python, which is found in Australia and New Guinea. So, no, this is not a parasite that normally infects humans. So the carpet python is the definitive host. This parasite, like many parasites, has a complex life cycle. So the carpet python is the definitive host. And when it's mature and it mates, then it sheds eggs in the snake's poop. And then the poop can be picked up by various small marsupials.
Or Sue.
And then the marsupials are eaten by a snake and the life cycle restarts
again.
Yes. So how did Sue wind up with this parasite? She had not been handling any snakes. She had not been swallowing small marsupials. But it is known that this parasite occasionally infects larger marsupials, birds, and non-native mammals. The larvae don't tend to grow as well inside these animals. But the area Sue lives in is carpet python habitat. And Sue also was in the habit of collecting a wild plant called warrigal greens to cook and eat. Kind of like spinach.
Oh, okay.
Kind of like spinach. So they think what happened is that Sue collected some contaminated greens, and either they didn't get cooked thoroughly, or her hands like cross contamination of her cutting board or whatever.
She didn't wash them well enough.
Ingested some worm eggs.
Awful.
Yeah.
Gross.
And the initial symptoms, the cough and so forth, were probably caused as the larva migrated through the various organs of her body. On the way to her
Finding
brain.
their way to the brain.
Yeah.
God.
Now,
I don't like that at all.
Of course, when I was reading about and researching this episode, I was also thinking about Kirk, your delightful episode from a few months ago about pork tapeworms.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, God, yeah.
Which also can wind up in your brain.
Parasites
but of course,
are the worst.
This is awful. It's like it happened recently. You're like, oh, this poor woman. course, pork tapeworms are a much bigger public health problem than this snake roundworm because humans are in fact the definitive host of the pork tapeworm instead of an accidental host like poor Sue. And this snakeworm doesn't even really want to be in humans because humans not going to get eaten by a carpet python. It's kind of the end of the road for that particular individual parasite. But also humans have a lot more contact in general with pigs than carpet pythons, although they are occasionally kept as pets.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in fact, Sue just had a lot of bad luck all around. First of all, to encounter the parasite at all, and then to have it survive in her body, and then to have it go into her brain. The liver is normally where these hang out in their marsupial hosts. And, some hosts don't even wind up having symptoms. So this is really overall an pretty unlikely thing to happen to you, even if you live in Australia. But still, other members of this same genus of roundworm affect snakes in various other parts of the world. So just don't think just because you don't live in Australia, you're safe.
This is why I tell the children after you touch the snake, you have to wash your hands before you eat food, lick your fingers, rub your eyes, or pick your nose.
That and salmonella, which is
also not great.
Yeah, same thing, yeah.
Yes. But, it's worth keeping in mind that if you go back more than a few decades, it's unlikely that what was going on with Sue would ever have been figured out. And that's still the case in many places around the world. So we don't actually know how often this happens to people. What kind of...
That's so comforting. Thank you.
Yes, isn't it? I wanted to just leave you with that comforting thought.
Great.
All right. Well, in researching this episode, I relied heavily on the case report that was published in the September 2023 issue of Emerging Infectious Diseases, and also an article from the New York Times about the case.
Thanks, Victoria. I
that?
hate it.
You're welcome. Thought you would love that. We're going to take a little break, and when we come back, it will be Kirk.
All right, everybody. So we talk a bit on this show about taxonomy. In fact, I kind of dabbled my toe into it last week talking about the wasps.
Yeah.
That's where scientists put animals into groups and name them. It's actually something we all do all the time, though. So when we see something, we automatically do a little taxonomy. We see movement in a tree, and we look up, our brain immediately takes in the information, and assuming we got a good look at the critter, we know if it was a squirrel or a bird. We might even know that it was a gray squirrel or a gray catbird if we know a little bit about animals. And since this podcast isn't a visual medium, when we have a weird-looking animal, we often show a picture to our co-hosts and ask them to describe it to the audience. And usually what happens is a little taxonomy. We'll start off by saying, well, it's a bird. It looks brightly colored. It's probably tropical. It's got a large bill, likely for eating fruits. It reminds me of parrots I've seen before, so it's probably a parrot.
Yeah.
Well, I came upon an animal this week that's not a parrot that I want to share with you, and I'm hoping we can go through that same process for the audience. I want you to describe it for them, but also take a stab at figuring out where you would place this animal taxonomically.
This will be fun.
And it's not... No, it's not, and you'll be surprised when I show it to you here. It's not a super, super weird-looking one. Here you go.
Okay.
So this is already... Why do you think it's a mammal?
I think it's a mammal because it looks furry, and it has 4 legs with...
It has a long
claws,
tail.
Long tail.
Yeah.
Well spotted. Mammals like the boom. That's pretty easy right there. It is a mammal.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's...
Then there's some hesitation after that.
So I will say, Kirk, I think I know this critter.
Yeah, I recognize this critter.
I think I know this critter in the fur.
I'm forgetting what it is, but I've definitely seen this before.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, it's got...
Can you describe it for the audience a bit?
So the fur overall is brown. Like
it's got short brown fur.
Like a very, like, the most brown, almost like chestnutty.
It seems to be a kind of a medium brown over all of the top part of its body. Maybe it's a little lighter underneath. It looks
like kind of chestnut
orangish on its chest, but it's a little hard to tell from the picture. It has a long,
Mhm.
strong-looking tail, and
Has relatively its paws, the toes look very distinct, like they're more separated in some cases. The
Okay.
face looks
Yeah. What would that remind you of?
uh,
Like what sort of group has feet like that?
like
I mean, they don't look like hippopotamus feet,
kind
they
right?
look
of.
a little bit
No,
like dog
well,
feet, but the toes are more separated.
toes are more, yeah. So
It's
which makes me think
Okay.
cat, but it's not.
Definitely
its head is
claws
somewhat
on there.
cat-shaped, although a little bit longer than a typical cat. It has fairly short ears that are
Kind of curled.
got brown eyes.
It has really long whiskers. It also reminds me, its face reminds me, and overall shape reminds me of a weasel almost as well.
It has a fairly long body.
Like it looks much bigger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks much bigger than a weasel, but
it does have a long body similar to the weasel family, mustelids, and relatively short legs.
Yeah.
My first reaction was that it had almost like the tail of like an otter. Maybe it's because the fur looks very short and kind of dense.
Yeah.
And that's sort of like the legs and claws, I kind of thought of like a large cat. And then the head is like, kind of cat-like, but almost the eyes are almost remind me of like a lemur or something. Like, it's this, like you look at it and you go, well, this isn't a super unusual looking animal,
or
but
like
I just
a
can't
fisher.
really place it, right?
Yeah. The overall shape of the body is fairly cat-like, or sort of a cross between a cat and an otter.
Yeah.
And the head
absolutely.
seems
Weasel.
disproportionately
An otter,
small.
mustelid, yeah.
It does, yeah. Well, what you are looking at.
I would put it in the feline
all right.
category. I'm gonna go up.
Well, what you're looking at is the fossa. And this is the top predator on the island of Madagascar. And yes, this is the animal in the DreamWorks movie Madagascar, sort of the bad guys. But I do have to admit, I've never actually bothered to watch that movie.
I haven't seen it.
Okay, good. So
I haven't seen it in a long time.
It came out long after I was a kid, but before my kid was born. So like it fell into this weird time when I wasn't watching movies like that. So quick geography lesson. Madagascar is the world's 4th largest island and is located off the eastern coast of Africa. It's slightly larger than California, and it is one of the most biologically diverse places on Earth, as it's been split off from all other land masses for over 90 million years. So 90 million years ago is when it split off from like the Indian subcontinent, and it split off from Africa as well, like something like 180 million years ago. Like it has been isolated for a long, long time. So imagine if California somehow completely split from North America and then was isolated for 90 million years. You can imagine things are going to look different than everywhere else on Earth.
Yes.
So the fossa is pretty interesting. It looks cat-like, like you said. And if you look at how it has been classified, it's in the class Mammalia, which you nailed right away. It's a mammal. It's in the order Carnivora, so it's a carnivore. And then in the suborder,
it looks
Feliforma
carnivore
for feline.
Okay,
so I will say at the pause there, though, don't celebrate too much. Feliforma does include cats, but also cat-like animals such as hyenas, mongooses, something called viverids, which we should talk about on the show sometime. Yeah, and I think the civids as well. So
we should.
When you look at the order of Carnivora, the 2 suborders that exist are basically cat-like creatures or dog-like creatures. I think it's just kind of how we decided to divvy up the carnivores. It's like, these things are kind of cat-like, those are kind of dog-like, and we'll just shoehorn everyone into one of those 2 groups.
Feels about right.
The family the fossa belongs to, though, is Eupleridae, and the family is unique to Madagascar. So the wildlife on Madagascar is so unique that this family of animals is found nowhere else on Earth. So they're really not closely related to much else.
Wild.
There's been lots of debate about what they are related to, because they have to be related to something. But the decision was made just to finally give them their own group. And from what I could tell, they split from other animals so long ago, it's been really difficult to figure out like who their closest relatives are, because they're just kind of doing their own thing. And that's why this animal is so hard for us to place just by looking at it. It isn't like super bizarre looking, like alien or anything. It looks like a 4-legged mammal that's maybe kind of cattish like, but it's really not that similar to anything else on Earth outside of Madagascar, which I think is fascinating.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
This is the largest predator on Madagascar, and there are some wild myths and stories about the fossa that come from the people who have lived with it for centuries. And while I certainly value local knowledge of animals, it should be pointed out some of these turn out to be more myth than reality, or completely myth rather than reality. Top predators around the world are often vilified. Looking at the big bad wolf, from Europe, for example. But on Madagascar, one local legend tells that a single lick from a fossa, just a lick, is so toxic and magical that it will put you into a trance-like sleep just from being licked just once by them. And this trance-like sleep is so deep that no one will ever be able to wake you up. And if that isn't bad enough, once you are asleep, the fossa will tear you open, eat just your intestines, and leave the rest of you to just bleed to death.
Good God.
Oh my
Luckily, that doesn't
God.
happen though. That's like a one story out there. Another legend is that they can give off a powerful smell, and they do have a bit of a smell about them. And the theory or story was that this smell was so powerful, just the smell alone could kill your poultry if they were even just to smell a fossa. So clearly they're being, vilified by people who've had their chickens die and whatnot. I think they very well actually will eat poultry because their diet is very varied. They seem to eat kind of whatever is handy. They eat tenrecs, which we've talked about on the show, but also shrews, seeds, fruit, lizards, birds, and famously, and this ties into the movie Madagascar, lemurs. They are one of the major predators of lemurs. And the only animal on the island that eats the largest of the lemurs that are found in Madagascar. So that's all really cool.
The ringtail.
Are you ready for the really weird stuff?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Yes?
No,
it was weird already?
Here's a few facts to round it out that I'm guessing, again, I haven't seen the movie, but I'm guessing none of these were in the cartoon. All right? Again.
Okay.
I can't verify that. I haven't seen it.
Not.
But that's my theory.
Behavior?
Yeah. So young female fossa actually grow a pseudopenis out of their clitoris. It turns into that pseudopenis.
Hey,
this is
like a
before
hyena.
they're kind of like a hyena, but a hyena's stays with them. This actually disappears once they become sexually mature, which is quite interesting and unique to fossa. And they think it is either to stop them from being harassed by males, since they're not sexually mature yet, or to make them seem like they're not a challenge to the other females. Researchers aren't quite sure which of those two reasons, but pretty interesting. I'm pretty sure that one was not in the film, right?
Nature's chastity belt, basically.
Okay.
That is not in the film.
Also, probably not in the film, is that fossa mate in trees. And what happens is a female will select a mating branch high up in a tree, and she makes these mewing noises to attract males. A bunch of males come around, maybe honestly it was like a dozen or so, and they will roar and make all kinds of noise and actually fight each other on the ground for the right to be the one who can climb the tree and mate on the branch. And she gets to choose who the victor is. The actual mating on the branch, which by the way, has got to be so precarious because it's
acrobatic.
That sounds like
not a big branch.
Hell of a balancing act
there. It's even more impressive when you realize that it's a bit of a marathon that can last for 3 hours per copulation.
Oh, wow.
This is likely partly or mostly because the male, like in a lot of species, has backward facing spines on his penis. So separating is tricky, shall we say. I imagine falling off the branch would also be unpleasant for multiple reasons. Yeah. And apparently they don't just mate once.
I don't think it sounds like a good idea.
They actually go for a marathon session consisting of multiple matings with the same male. An entire session may last up to 14 hours.
Sounds exhausting.
Whoa.
Like I said, also likely not
I'm
in
tired.
the DreamWorks film. Okay, last weird one. The scientific genus for the fossa is Cryptoprocta. So how's your Latin? Any guesses what that means?
I love
Crypto
that.
means sort of hidden, right?
Correct. And procta?
Procta,
So
like
What words? Not
like
that
a
one.
proximity.
proctologist.
Close.
Correct. It means anus. So
Oh.
their genus
Called it.
is the hidden
There it
anus
is.
genus. They have a special anal pouch that I guess covers their anus, which gives them this bizarre name. I should say the species name is ferox, which means ferocious. So basically their full name means ferocious hidden anus,
Is ferocious.
which sounds like
hidden
I don't know, like a
anus.
punk band name or something. Anyways, that's what I got. My sources this week were factanimal.com and Wikipedia.
That's a time.
Well, that was enlightening. Thank you.
Just a lot of stunned silence after that one.
Thanks, Kirk.
You're welcome. We're going to go to a break here, and we come back. It'll be Rachel. Hey, before we get to Rachel's story, we do have more listener letters. We got some comments on the show. Both of these came through the Podbean app. That's a really popular way for people to
Yay.
be messaging us. One of these, actually both of these are from the same episode, which was the one about maned wolves from just a little ways back.
Oh yeah.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, and a
Oh,
listener
I
who's
saw
written us
this.
before,
Yeah.
Homem Salamandro, the human salamander, who lives down in Brazil, wrote us to tell us that down in Brazil, they apparently put the maned wolf on one of their bills for their currency. And that was super. I had no idea that was on the money. I would have included that in the
Cool.
show had I known. Thank you for letting us know. They did say that they remember that people were complaining about it because it looked so weird and lanky. And they're like, who did this drawing? But then people were like, no. It's supposed to look like that. That's what they look like, which was a great little anecdote.
Oh yeah.
And then
That's
AL,
what they look like.
I
Go
just
ahead.
googled an image of the currency. That's cool.
Awesome. And then another comment on that same show, AL Val or Valley, I think it's Val, said, our zoo actually has maned wolves. I didn't know about their smell at the time. And I will remind you guys, they smell like
Oh, I saw
cannabis.
this comment.
So they didn't know about the smell at the time, and I came upon them as a group of young people were already at the exhibit. I truly thought they had just gotten baked in their car. I visited again a few weeks ago and realized the smell was coming from the wolves. Oof. Sorry, guys. I wonder if you thought the same of me. I imagine everyone who goes to the zoo and sees them is just like, man, everyone here is just baked out of their mind. What is going on? But no, that's just the smell of their urine. So thanks for writing in, everybody. Always fun to hear from you. You can send us comments either on the Podbean
Amazing.
app or at contact@strangebynaturepodcast.com. We'll hear from you guys soon, and let's get to Rachel.
So, this topic that I'm talking about this week, it reminds me of, I gave a little clue last week, like the smallest clue.
Yeah, you mentioned a little something.
I mentioned that I was thinking about one of our older episodes with the golden digger wasps and things. And
Right.
the reason why is because my topic this week actually reminds me of a topic I covered about very, 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 very early on. I think it might have even been, it wasn't the first episode, but it's definitely within the first 10 when I talked about the freshwater bryozoan. If you all remember that.
Yeah, the brain.
I think we
looking stuff
promised
underwater,
that we were
right?
going to take a picture
Yeah.
of me holding one, and then we never did it.
We haven't done it yet, but there's still time, Victoria.
Oh, yeah.
So the topic that I have this week is on a much larger scale, and hilariously, it's in the ocean. Who would have guessed? So we're going to talk about it
who
today.
would have guessed? Shocking.
No one. So this is very similar to the freshwater bryozoan. Today, I'm going to talk about a very specific tunicate. So a tunicate, for all of our listeners, is a marine invertebrate, such as like sea squirts, for example, if anyone knows what that is. But what makes it different than most invertebrates is that they do have a type of spinal cord. They just don't have physical bones or like a bone structure or anything covering that spinal cord.
They're chordates, but not vertebrates.
Exactly.
Oh,
and it's
weird.
That's already wild and weird.
Yes.
So this specific tunicate is colonial, very similar to that freshwater bryozoan, and the individuals, like that bryozoan, is called zoids. Okay, and they're all very small. They're okay. So we're back to
like
zoids.
Zoidberg.
Okay.
No, but there has been there have actually been they've been related to the Borg, actually, which is hilarious.
Okay.
By a marine biologist. So there is that. They also like this absolutely. So this particular tunicate, this colony of tunicates, when they're all together, look very similar to jellyfish at first. But because they have that spine, or not a spine, but they have the spinal column or spinal cord rather. They're actually closer related. The notochord they're more closely related to humans than jellyfish, but they have a similar gelatinous type nature to them, which is really cool.
Yeah. Wow.
This particular species lives in the upper layers of the pelagic ocean, which means open ocean, and they generally live as a colony. And this colony is generally either cylindrical or cone-shaped. Now, these colonies are composed of hundreds, sometimes thousands of zoids, and they're all held together by something called a gelatinous tunic.
Oh, why, Rachel?
Why not? Well, apparently divers who have come across this tunicate have said that it feels very soft, like a feather. And I think that's partially because it's gelatinous and you're in the water, so it feels very soft and smooth. But they're all together by this, held together by this gelatinous tunic. So that's fun. Now, here's the thing.
No.
Now, here's the thing. I haven't said the name. This group, this colony, they are called the giant pyrosome. And the reason, giant pyrosome.
Giant pyrosome?
Yes.
Okay.
And scientists do actually call them, apparently some scientists call them the unicorns of the sea, which is hilarious.
Okay.
Because I guess they call them because of how big they get and the fact that they're so, because of their colonial nature and how they move, they really go through the ocean based on the currents. So they're floating through, they're filter feeders. So they're taking in water on both sides because they're generally a cone or a tube. And so they're taking in water and filtering in. They're one of the most efficient plankton eating filter feeders, which is really cool. Wow. But here's the thing. They can get up to 60 feet long.
What?
That's
a really large gelatinous
So
tunic.
that is 12 Rachels.
Most little like sea squirts and stuff are these really cute little tiny things.
I mean, they are cute little tiny things. They just,
60?
In a colony, they get up to 18 meters or 60 feet long.
Sure.
Like,
Oh my God.
So these
That's huge.
scuba divers have been able to swim through these giant pyrosomes. They are able to swim through them. They've been equated actually also like a giant windsock, but in the ocean.
Yeah.
So
God, that's not quite as big, but that's approaching the size of an adult blue whale.
Yeah.
I mean, that's which is the largest, animal on Earth, basically. So I mean,
Pretty much.
And again, this is a colony, so it's different. But
Yeah, it's a colony.
like, that's nuts.
Isn't that wild?
Wow.
So they are huge. The colony itself gets huge, and because it's a colony, the way that each colony works is they're able to either asexually produce, or if they come across another giant pyrosome, they are able to like sexually reproduce, and all the zoids are hermaphroditic, so they produce both sperm and eggs. So it doesn't quite matter what is happening. Like they can sexually reproduce with the other giant pyrosome, and then they can reproduce. If they get cut into pieces at all or split up, they can just regrow. Yeah. So technically,
sure, because it's just a colony, right?
It's just colonies. So technically, these colonies are like immortal because the colony itself will
ancient,
keep going and going and going no matter what, which is wild.
Oh my gosh.
So,
and some of these, I think they found some of these, like, I don't know what the species you're talking about, but the same type of things going back for hundreds of millions of years in the fossil records. So, I mean, they have been around this whole time, just hanging out, doing their thing. Pretty efficient design.
So this is,
awesome.
It just gets down to the genus. It doesn't go down to species specific necessarily. So the genus is Pyrosoma. Now, Kirk, how good is your Latin? I know Victoria's is better.
Not great. What do you got?
Well, think about the word pyrosoma.
Pyro makes me think of fire.
Yes, it's fire.
And some is like body.
Yes. There's a reason why it's called a pyrosome. It's because they are brightly luminescent. So they are bioluminescent.
What?
On top of being
60 foot long bioluminescent tube?
Yeah. Like a pale blue-green light, which can be seen for tens of meters, which is wild. Yeah, so like it often looks like a wave of light moving through the pyrosome.
Oh man, that must be so amazing to see one of those.
I would love to swim with them if it wasn't that
wild.
cookie cutter sharks might also take a bite out of me.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Little call back there.
Yeah, yes. So it's just really cool because the waves move with the colony and they're not propagated by neurons, but some sort of stimulation of light.
Sure, that makes sense.
They're still not 100% sure. Sometimes it's in response to something touching them, which is really cool.
Sure.
Generally speaking, it's these occur in the Pacific. So it's very wild that, like, can you imagine coming across this in the open ocean? Just this giant tube-looking thing. And you touch it and it starts producing this blue-green light, like in like waves, like flashing.
I'm down to check it out. I'm just not sure. Where do I go in the ocean to see this, Rachel?
Generally speaking, the North Atlantic would be where you would find them. Yeah.
I'm not near there, but I could be further.
Exactly. So they're just so cool. It is very fun. And I saw these huge zoids, these huge, the fact that it was 60 feet long and everything and people can swim through it was just wild. And I wanted to share that today.
That's awesome. I was not familiar with that. Thank you.
Is there any thought that these could be one of the creatures that's behind the serpent legends?
Entirely possible, not from the research that I was doing, but it could be, yeah.
I mean, or even some ideas about the sea being kind of magical. If you're seeing these lights and things from underwater, like what is it like?
Especially if it's gelatinous, like you won't necessarily be able to tell that it's something in there. It's just this moving, flashing thing. Wild.
Wow.
So
very cool.
Very fun. So my sources this week, I had an article from The Atlantic, Wikipedia, Oceana.org, and CIMI.org. That's what I have for you this week.
That's so cool. Thank you.
Thank you. That was great. We'll see everybody next week for more, right?
Next week.
Thanks everyone for listening. We will see you all next week. Bye.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks everyone for listening to today's show. Be sure to subscribe. New episodes drop every Wednesday, and we love sharing this strange world with all of our listeners. If you would be so kind as to leave us a 5-star review, that would be great. It lets other lovers of the strange discover the show. You can reach out to us on social media by searching for Strange by Nature Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can send us an email as well. Our address is contact@strangebynaturepodcast.com. If you want more information about the show, you can also check out our website, which is strangebynaturepodcast.com. Until next week, get outside, stay curious, and embrace the strange.